Welcome to another Small Business Pivots where we have special guests from around the world. And we have one from the sunny state of Florida today. And as you know, if you listen to the show at all, I let the business owner introduce themselves and their business because no one can do it like them. So, my friend, go ahead and introduce yourself and your business, and let's get started.
Well, Michael, a privilege to be here. Bill Blankschaen is who I am in terms of my name, but I thought if you don't mind, I'll tell a story that kind of
Absolutely.
that'll help take the listeners to who I am and how I became that, really. And I'm going to start back, about 14 years ago. I was my previous life, as I call it. I helped to start a private school and was leading a private school for about a dozen years. I was doing really good work, helping make the world a better place, working with kids, getting hugs from kindergartners every morning, and helping teenagers navigate the next season of life and families and all that. But yet, inside of me, I began to feel stuck. Like there was this sense of a deeper calling within me that I wasn't touching. You see, for most of my life, I had thought of myself as a writer, but I wasn't writing. I had thought of myself as a storyteller, but I wasn't really telling stories. And so I eventually came to the place where I realized, either I need to let go of this calling within me and just put it aside and just focus on what I'm doing, running a school, or I need to let go of the school and pursue this calling.
Yeah.
And ultimately, otherwise, I thought, I'm going to regret this. I'm going to look back years later and regret it. And I didn't want that to happen. So I stepped away from the school, stepped in this direction. We had 6 kids. We went a year with no income going through this process.
Wow.
But I never worked harder in my life. I was creating book ideas and developing book proposals and talking to publishers, everybody in the storytelling industry, just learning, growing, sucking it all up. And I became almost a student of the art and science of storytelling and really focused in on that. But it was not easy by any stretch of the imagination. If you can imagine 6 kids, no income, there were a lot of times that I was wondering, what on earth am we doing?
I can't imagine what your family was thinking.
Yeah. Well, they were super supportive, but I just had this probably irrational fear that, hey, if what the worst that could happen, what if we end up living out of a cardboard box under a freeway somewhere because it didn't work out. And I remember one day in particular, I was living in Northeast Ohio at the time. One day in particular, I'm sitting in the backyard. It's a beautiful spring Ohio day. The birds are singing, the sun's shining, the wind's kind of drifting by, and I'm sitting there with a pen and a paper, working on a book idea, trying to develop that. And so on the outside, I remember thinking everything is just beautiful here, and on the inside, though, I've got all these fears that I'm wrestling with. All this, I don't think this is going to work. What if this fails? What if all these things? And it was like this, Michael. It was like I had this idea that it was like I was sitting in the middle of a road at the bottom of a steep hill. And the road coming down the steep hill at me, on that road, there was this tractor trailer semi truck loaded with steel, like barreling down toward me as I'm sitting at the bottom of the hill, and with no brakes. Right. So it was like there's no way it could stop. It was not going to be pretty. Something bad was going to happen. And all I could do was sit in the middle of that road and do what I felt called to do, like what I believed to be true for me to be doing, and write and develop that. And that's what I did. I kept moving forward. As it turns out, the very book idea I was working on that day ended up being picked up by a publisher. And it proved to be a real pivot point for me because I realized as I wrote the book that I'm actually really good at this. I'm really good at writing books. I'm really good at taking ideas and turning them into this story form and engaging. And then other people began to ask me, "Hey, can you help me with my book? Can we do that?" So suddenly I realized, you know what? I think we can actually help a lot of people here while I'm doing what I love to do and helping get those stories out to the world. And so for the last 12 plus years, that's what we've been doing. We've helped people with big names like Lewis Howes and John Maxwell and Dean Graziosi and all these bigger names, but also a lot of people who are coaches, consultants, entrepreneurs, business professionals, thought leaders in various ways. Help take their message and turn it into something powerful that they can really build a business around and increase their impact, their influence, their income through that. Because what I realized through that whole experience was this. I realized that my breakthrough began when I started with my story. When I was like, hey, what is the story I want to tell? This is what it is. This is the story I want to live. I'm going to lean into that and share my story going forward. And I think the same thing is true for everybody, that breakthrough begins when you have that courage to start with your story and lean into that and build something around that. So that's a little bit of, that's a long introduction of who I am and what we do, but hopefully that gives a little bit of the context and the story behind it.
Absolutely. Well, let's just dive in because storytelling is a big thing that people don't think about. And for most business owners, when I ask them, I said, tell me your story, they can wrap it up in about 30 seconds.
Sure.
But to tell a good story, how do you mold that so it's interesting, it is impactful, like you said?
Yeah. Well, I think there's a couple ways of thinking about this. One is, well, we use our storytelling structure, which we created. It's a proven storytelling model based on millions of years or thousands of years of storytelling techniques. So it's a solid foundation that you can leverage that. And if you want, we can talk through the different parts of that. But I think the first part of that even is recognizing the value of our stories. And what I mean by story, I don't just mean what's happened to you, the events that have happened to you. I mean the lessons you've learned from that, your successes, your failures, your credentials, this whole body of wisdom that we accumulate as we go through life. And I think that we often undervalue that. We don't see the value of that because we fall into what I call the normalcy trap. It feels normal to us, and therefore we think it probably isn't very valuable to somebody else because it feels normal to me.
Right.
And then we share it with somebody and a light bulb goes on. They're like, oh, you too? Oh, I didn't. That's awesome. I didn't know that. I can learn from that. Right. And so I think it really is a lot about having the courage to share our stories in the first place. And then I think overcoming this other barrier and understanding the connection continuum. And what I mean by that is, think of Walt Disney. What made him such a good storyteller was he didn't try to come up with something amazingly fresh and new that nobody had ever heard of. Instead, he found proven stories that were already out there that he knew people were drawn to, and then he gave them a fresh twist or a fresh perspective. So he took the familiar and he put a little fresh to it, and he had a story that people connected to. They were drawn to it. Good example is Beauty and the Beast is a more modern rendition, or Snow White. Snow White was Walt's first big one. It wasn't a new story. It had been around as a fairy tale for a long time, right? It was a proven story, and he took it, put his own spin on it. Beauty and the Beast, another one more recently, right? There's a tale that's been around for hundreds of years, and what Disney did was they put their own fresh take on it. And I think people need to understand that is they don't need an amazingly crazy, fresh story that nobody's ever heard of. In fact, that can alienate people. If it's too fresh and too different, it creates a disconnect. Now, on the other hand, if it's too familiar, if it sounds just like everybody else's story, then that creates the sense of like it's a duplication. I've heard this before. But when you find that middle ground in that connection continuum, that's where people really start to be drawn in to our stories, and where they start to resonate with it, they start listening to it because it feels familiar and yet fresh, all at the same time.
How does someone turn their story to be impactful? Because I hear a lot of people try to tell their story and it's just like as simple as, well, I went to the grocery store, bought some groceries, went home, put them in the shelf. Who wants to hear that? How is that impactful? So I know a lot of us, you talked about the normalcy. Our stories are normal to us because we witnessed them. And for a lot of people, they're like, well, no one's interested in my story.
Yeah.
How do we make it interesting or impactful, turn those things into impactfulness?
Yeah. Well, I think you put your finger on it when you said it feels normal to us, right? So we have to understand that the story that we're telling to the rest of the world is about us, but it is not for us. Right. So whatever it's that story we're telling, we have to get clear on who our ideal audience is. And I talk about this in great detail in my book, Your Story Advantage, to help equip people to get clear on their audience. Because when you understand that, that changes how you tell your story. I mean, think about it yourself. The story you just said, I went home, put groceries and did this and that. you would tell that story differently to a 7-year-old than you would to a 70-year-old, right?
Yeah.
It would be, and is it an old friend? Is it a fellow entrepreneur? Is it, somebody you met at church or a social event, or that story? We automatically tell that story a little differently. But when it comes to our businesses and our brands and so forth, often we don't think who exactly is my audience, and who's at my audience at the core. I talk about the ideal audience as kind of 3 circles. Like at the core, who is that I'm talking to? And then there's a secondary audience that, all right, they're in the neighborhood. And then there's a third audience that, all right, they might be drawn in or attracted, but they're not who I'm really pursuing. You have to get crystal clear on that core. Who are the people that I'm speaking to? Like at StoryBuilders, we're really wanting to work with entrepreneurs and business professionals, thought leaders who feel like they've got a message we're sharing with the world, but they need help elevating that. They need help getting it into the form of a book or a brand story or an IP development, right? And so we're not, trying to pursue a bunch of other people at that time. Now, along that way, we're going to meet other people who maybe they don't quite fit in that box, but we can help them too. But we're not trying to, help people who are way outside of that and are just don't really have that interest in that. So getting that core focus becomes really critical to shaping what parts of your story you're sharing, how you're sharing it, either for your organization or your personal brand or your message. That same process applies, although it gets applied a little bit differently through each one of those. And that's what I walk through in the book, is how do you do that in each one of those different areas.
It's interesting because just not too long ago, myself, I wondered why I would ever need to tell a story. When would I ever use that? And then it didn't dawn on me because I do public speaking. So
yeah,
storytelling is a big thing in public speaking. So I started picking up some books, and some of these books have reminded me, like, you tell stories at the family dinner, you tell them in sales. Like you don't have to be a book to tell your story. It can be anywhere, just more interesting and impactful. So for those that are on here going, I'll never write a book, it's not about just books. It's just storytelling, the impact that they can have.
Yeah, and in fact, I devote a whole chapter to this, and we give away a resource in the book, the free resource in the book that people can use to message anything in a way that will make it matter. Let's say you're a leader talking to your employees about something or your team about something. You're like, all right, how do I position this? That storytelling structure gives you that proven formula for exactly how to do that. How do you think through it intentionally, rather than just, I got to say something, I'll just blurt it out there. And no, let's be intentional about it. And let's think through the 5 parts of that. If that's right, Michael, let me just talk through
Absolutely. That's where I was going.
Yeah, because I think this will be really helpful. The 5 parts at a big picture are attention, tension, connection, solution, and action. And so I'll walk through each one of these. The first one is attention. That's about how do you get someone's attention to make them actually want to hear what you have to say. Right? We often assume that because I'm talking, everybody must want to listen, right? But that's simply not the case.
Just because you have the floor, no one cares.
Yeah, exactly. It's almost like positional leadership. Just because you have the title doesn't mean anybody's following you, right? So when it comes to attention, the key question to ask there is, what do they want? Right? What your employees and your communicate, what do they want? Your customer, what is it that they want? Your family at the dinner table, what is it they want? So you start with that position, and then the tension is really what's keeping them from getting what they want. What are the challenges? What are their fears? What are their concerns? I literally just had this happen in communication today in our own company, StoryBuilders, where I was communicating something to someone, and as I was going in advance of that, thinking, they're going to have this concern, they're going to have this fear as a mom and as a family and so forth. And so as I presented the message I was presenting, I called that out. Like, I talked about it and I presented it, and they were nodding, yes, you get me, you understand me, we're connected, right? So it positioned us in a really powerful way. And I think a lot of people kind of gloss over the tension portion because they think, I don't want to talk about the problems. I don't want to talk about the potential challenges that are here. That's kind of awkward. But it's in those awkward places that's where people live. They are very much familiar with the challenges they're feeling and the fears and concerns. And there's a lot more depth to each one of these, but that leads to that third step, which is connection. All right. So the first question is, what do they want? What challenges do they face? And the third question is connection, which is, why should they listen to you? Right. And it isn't just because you're the boss. That doesn't actually motivate them
Right.
as much to listen to you, right? But why should they listen to you? And I think there's two components of this. First, they want to know that you get it. You get the pain, you get the struggle that they've had, you get the challenges that they're going through. And this is where your story begins to come into play, because you can hearken back to, where was a time when I felt something similar? When did I deal with something similar? Let me just share this example with you, something I've used at StoryBuilders many times. During that season, when I had stepped out from the school, we had no income. How are we going to pay the bills? We did have a few assets. I'll call them assets, but one of them was a massive John Deere backhoe tractor that had been left in our backyard by the previous owner of our house, just left there, and it was rusting. And me and mechanical don't get along, so I could never figure out how to make it work. And I was sitting one day out there, thinking and praying about how we're going to pay the bills. And I looked at that thing and I'm like, it's got all kinds of parts on it. I bet it's worth something to somebody somewhere.
Yep.
And we could sell this thing. And I was praying about that. And this was on a Thursday morning. And I was like, what I would love to have is to have that thing out of here in 2 days for $1,000. That would be a help. That'd be great if we could just get that out of here. And as I thought about that and prayed about that, I realized in order for that backhoe tractor, massive tractor, to leave our property, it was going to have to come over a little creek that ran through our backyard. And there was a wooden bridge over it. And it was about a 14-foot expanse that it was going to have to go over. And I realized, all right, if I'm serious about that, if I expect that thing to be out of here in 2 days, it's going to have to go over that bridge. Is that bridge ready for it? And I realized it's not. And so the message that I got from that was, I need to brace the bridge. I need to shore up that bridge if I'm expecting this to take place. And so I share that with the family, my business family, all the time, the StoryBuilders family. I've shared it often at times when it was like, all right, if we expect X, then we need to do Y, right? If we expect this to happen, we need to brace the bridge. It's the brace the bridge story. They all know it by now, right? So we need to brace the bridge. And so all I have to do now is, hey, I think we should brace the bridge. And they're like, oh, that story, got it. I get the message. As a matter of fact, 2 days later, Saturday, that thing left our yard, came over that bridge that we had braced for $1,000, right? So that was like, but if I hadn't braced the bridge, it couldn't have made it over, right? So that's what I'm talking about, that connection, is letting them know, hey, I understand what it's like, whatever the situation is, and I've had success in navigating it, or failure, and here's what I've learned from it, right? So that's kind of where that connection comes in. And then the fourth step is solution. This is really the heart of the message, right? What do they need to do based on what you're sharing with them? What is it that the main message that they need in order to solve that problem they're having before, whatever fears, whatever concerns they have, right? So we go back to attention. What do they want? Tension. What challenges are keeping them from getting what they want? Connection. Why should they listen to you? And then fourth is, what is it that they need to know in order to solve this problem? This is such a powerful step. In a simple messaging, it could be a simple statement, but this is really what you want to talk about. This is really what's on your heart and mind. But notice it comes fourth in the process. Usually, I think leaders, we jump to, all right, here's what I want to say, boom, there it is, and walk away. Instead of thinking, what do they want? What challenges are they facing? How can I present this in a way that shows that I feel their pain, I get it, I've been there, done that, I know a way forward, and then here's the way forward, right? Yeah. So leading up to that in that way. Now, the reality is this solution piece of this model can be expanded out into your entire brand message, your meaningful message. It can be built your intellectual property. There's so much that can be done with it. But in the context of a distinct message, it often is much more compact. And then the final step.
You're listening to Small Business Pivots. This podcast is produced by my company, Boss. Our business is helping yours grow. Boss offers business loans with business coaching support. Apply in minutes and get approved and funded in as little as 24 to to 48 hours at businessownershipsimplified.com. If you're enjoying this podcast, don't forget to hit the subscribe button and share it as well. Now let's get back to our special guest.
And then the final step is action. What action do they need to take based on what they just learned? Right? You kind of have to define for people what would be best for you to do based on my knowledge of things. Here's what you should do next, and don't just assume that people know what they need to do next in that communication. I do know one of the free resources that we have available is it's just a one-page kind of a handy sheet that you can use to make any message matter. Like we can work through that storytelling structure format, and people can get that for free, by the way, at yourstoryadvantage.com/free resources. They don't even need to buy the book. They can get the download for free and then use it, right, to map out their messaging, and hopefully it'll be a valuable tool for them.
How does the book process work? So we have the framework, but we all know books come in different sizes, right?
Sure.
So how does one decide, do I want a short story, long story? Is there any framework or method to that, or is that just personal preference?
Well, if we're talking about books, right, in terms of the length of that, here's my thought on it. A book should be as long as it needs to be to effectively communicate the message. Full stop, right? There's no magical size. There is no whatever. I've worked with and written books with authors that were, I'll say word counts that might not mean anything to you, but we're 40,000 words. One of the most powerful, effective books you ever read. Other books, 75, 80,000, twice the size. Also powerful and effective, right? Yeah. So it really doesn't mean my own book is, I don't know what the word count is, like the 40,000 range or something like that, because it's designed to be easily read, easily digested, easily put to use, right? So it really depends on that. I think it goes to one of the core book starter questions that we ask at the start of any book project, and that is your story strategy question, which is, how does this book fit into what you're trying to build? Like what are you trying to accomplish here? Begin with the end in mind, if you will, right? What are you what's the big picture look like? And then retro engineer the book that you need to fit that spot, right? If you're looking for, hey, I want to have a brand defining book that establishes me as a thought leader in a space, then it probably needs to be substantial, but not wordy, but substantial, and it really has a lot of the original thinking and so forth. If you're looking for a book that will establish you kind of as more of an expert in the space around your procedures and your methods and so forth, maybe it doesn't have to be that long, right? Maybe it's a book that I'll just use you, Michael, as an example, right? I know what you do, business coaching, consulting, and so forth. Maybe it's something that kind of captures your unique approach to things and your philosophy, and it's something that people can read and like, I like this. I connect with this guy. I want to work with Michael. That kind of feel. Because the reality is, a book can go places you'll never go, and it can touch more people than you'll ever know. I mean, books just find a way into people's hands, and you often are like, I don't know how that happened, but okay, great to meet you. Glad it headed in back.
What do you think is the power? I kind of have my subjective opinion, but you do this professionally. So what do you think the power of having your story in book format does for someone? I always see public speakers always has books in the back. And so, for a lot of people, they may not understand the power of what a book can do for you. Totally.
Well, one, it serves as a tremendous credential, right? It establishes you as an expert. If you've written a book on something, you've literally written the book on that, right? And so people assume you must know a lot about that topic. And what the reality is, that's usually the case, because if you go through the book creation process, and that doesn't mean you're doing the writing yourself, by the way, we can talk about that later. But when you go through that book creation process, it forces you to really get clear on your ideas and your message. And so you come out of that with this core content clarity that you're now better able to speak about the message because you've done the work of figuring out what you want to say about the message. Right, so it gives you that clarifying effect, but it also becomes just such a business and brand building tool. If you're looking to build a personal brand or a business brand, it's a door opener. It opens doors in ways that people kind of know what to do with it. So, I mean, a good example in our conversation here, if I didn't have a book coming out, we probably would still be having a conversation. But because I've written a book on something, it kind of makes it easier for someone like yourself or others to be like, all right, that this person's probably pretty knowledgeable about this. They've written a book on it. Let's have them, let's talk, let's have a conversation, see if it has value, right? And so it people know what to do with authors. Because you got to remember, the word author itself is the foundation of the word authority, right? It's in the word itself. And so people assume, all right, that person has some authority in this space. They've got something to contribute in this space that matters and is meaningful because they've written a book on it, right? So it just does so much to establish someone in that way. And then the final thing I would say, it opens the door for that intellectual property monetization. Something I talk about in the book is your story ecosystem. And I think everybody needs to be aware of that and the possibility of building that out around our story. And the story ecosystem is how are we organically growing around our meaningful message and the story that we want to share with the world? How are we growing it in a way that can produce impact, influence, and income? And it kind of begins with your brand story. I call it the message maker. Like, what is your message? Getting clear on that. And then your message multiplier, which is your book. And then beyond that, your intellectual property that you can build to monetize the message, whether it's courses or workshops or coaching programs or trainings or just so many other ways that you can monetize that in a way that then produces the income that positions you to help more people, right? For me, that's what it's about. It's not about just making money. It's about how do we help people. I mean, that's one of the reasons why all the proceeds from the sale of my book go to help adoption efforts, right? Because we want to help kids live better stories and give them those opportunities to do that in that process. So a lot to think about there, but that's how I think about the value of a book.
Yeah, from time to time, I will say I have my opinion, and then I let the guest share theirs, and then I'll get an email that says, "What was your opinion?"
Yeah,
So
yeah.
I'm going to give my opinion.
Yeah, please.
I think it also helps with,
Yeah.
are they credible? And here's why I think,
Mm.
because on the internet these days, it's this person posted this, but now the post is gone. It's been changed. It's been with a book. When someone buys it, I can't go to their house and scratch out that part I lied about or made up. And so you're going to be found out. And so it really holds. That's kind of why I think it really, like, you better be telling the truth, because it will come out eventually, and you can't change what you wrote.
Yeah, yeah, I like that. I like that. That's a good point. The staying power of books.
Yeah, staying power.
I mean, as someone who has studied a lot of the classic storytelling, Shakespeare didn't have the internet, right? And all the classic books, even the ones that have impacted me. I know one book that really impacted me. I'm looking on my shelf here. Stephen Covey's book, First Things First.
Yeah,
was just so powerful. I've read it numerous times, but that was all, pre-internet stuff, back in the day, right?
right.
And somehow that book found its way into my hands. I picked it up, I think, for a quarter at like a library sale or something like that. It was the best quarter I ever invested.
I was going to say that was the best investment you've ever made. Well, let's talk about the process of creating the book, because you mentioned that earlier. What is it like for those that have never gone through the process? Because I know that's kind of like, well, where do I even start?
Sure. Well, I mean, in the book, I give all the key questions that will really get you started, really lay the strong foundation. But, if someone's working with us, for example, there's kind of two ways they can go. They can either, well, let me just put more definition around that. I'm not going to talk about a lot of stuff that's in the book that might help answer nuances to that question, but there's a lot in there as well, and in the various courses we offer and so forth. But you kind of have to make the decision: am I going to write the book on my own, or am I going to write the book with somebody else? And to me, that comes down to if you want to elevate, you have to collaborate, right? If anything worth doing really well, you probably need to collaborate with somebody who knows more than you do in various aspects to help figure it out. The same's true with books, right? So do I want to get somebody coaching me through this process? Or our most popular vehicle actually is I want somebody to actually do the writing for me. And maybe I'm not a writer, and I don't, that's a big barrier for a lot of people. It's not a problem. Most of the successful authors out there, the books that you read, they didn't do all the writing themselves. They did the thinking, the communicating, and they had people actually come alongside and do the writing, do the creation of it, and so forth. That freed them to focus on the things they do well and speak into that message, and somebody else was able to shape that. And then from that, we handle everything from publication and all, we can handle publication. We also work with a lot of traditional publishers as well. So that process is really, I would define it, a lot of people define it as therapeutic. It's, all that stuff that's been pinging around in someone's heart and mind for so long, to be actually able to get that out and see it come alive with their story and integrate it in a way that is shaped in a powerful way that actually has the impact and the influence that they want, and to share that with the world. It often feels like there's this load that's been lifted from them, right? So they may come into it with, I'm not sure what's going to happen. They come out of it with, man, I'm glad that happened. Wow, I'm so glad I didn't put that off. So glad we got it done. And then they start getting the results from that. People start saying, man, your book changed my life. They come up at a restaurant and say, I'm so glad you wrote that, because now I'm doing things different because this and that, right? And so you have that kind of mentality that is derived from that, and the results from that when they begin that process. But it really is a fun, creative process that, there's no reason to have the barriers of I'm not a writer, I'm not concerned about it. We come alongside and help do all that and bring it to life. I'm thinking of a gentleman right now, actually, is a really good business consultant. He has a unique style, and he's actually had a great deal of success. I won't name his name because I don't want to identify the group that he helps with, but it's a very well-known CEO entrepreneurial advisory group that's international. He's had a lot of success there, and we're in the final stages now of bringing his book to life, where we're doing the writing with him and so forth. It's a powerful but unique book. It's unique to him, unique to his voice, and we're getting ready to put it out in the world because he's seen the vision for, I think I can do more. I can help more people if I can even stand more on my own and do more in that independent space. And that book is going to help him do that, really establish him in that way for all the reasons we just talked about. And then that is brought to life because he's got decades now of helping entrepreneurs and business leaders do that. And he's got so much wisdom, and we're able to package it in a powerful way that meets the audience, thinking with the audience in mind. And then how do we package it in a way that resonates with them? And then that opens doors for him to have greater impact, influence, and of course, income as a result of that.
I wrote my book years ago and did all the writing, everything myself, because I wanted it to be my own voice and not have to remember, did I say that in that book or not? Yeah. Did somebody write that in for me? But for me, it was therapeutic. It healed some wounds. It made me vulnerable. I was able to, and it made me okay with some of the things like that I was holding within, that I used to think less of myself. And then when I wrote it down and I saw what came out of that, I'm like, well, that wasn't so bad. Good for you, little guy.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of things. It's emotional too, I would think, for a lot of people.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And I would add to what you're saying there, I get the desire to want to make sure it's you and capture your voice. I mean, my own book, I used our own team. I went through the same process that anybody that works with us goes through, because I knew they could add value to it, and they did. Right. And so it's still, I know everything in it is my own, and I adjusted it and tweaked it and made sure it was everything that I wanted it to be and know it well. But you're right. As an author, what you can't do, this is what some people do, is they just outsource the book creation to somebody else. And I just want pages with words on them that I can say I wrote a book. Right. Yeah. And that's not what we do. And that's not what I recommend for anybody, because that can actually do more harm than good for your brand. So first of all, I applaud you for doing the work and getting that out and putting that out into the world. And I get it. I mean, you gotta, no matter who does the writing, the author is the one, that's where the message comes from, right? That's where the heart of that is at. And that's the author's the one who's going to be talking about that. And so it's got to be something that's meaningful to the author to bring it to life.
And to your credit, I didn't know people like you existed at that
Yeah,
time.
sure. Sure.
So I was like, I just wanted to write a book,
Right,
and it
right,
was
right.
more turned into more of a memoir than anything else. But
Sure.
it was a fun process. And for our listeners, I do not recommend doing that. It was the most grueling. I think I had to go through 4 professional copywriters. It probably cost me more
Yeah,
to
probably.
publish that
Yeah,
book the way I did it than it would be to
sure,
have hired someone like yourself. I'm
sure.
curious. So we see all these books of different sizes, and I know there's bunches of variables that probably would be your answer to this, but what is the approximate time to write and publish a book? Like 6 months,
Mm,
2 years,
mhm,
5 years?
mhm.
I'm curious because there's so many
Yeah,
books out there.
yeah. It kind of depends on the path. So first of all, I'll tell you right now, you're going to hear people who will say, "Oh, just use AI and you can have a book in 30 days or something like that." Yeah, if you want, like the styrofoam cup version of a book
Yeah.
that isn't going to withstand the heat and is going to be gone 30 days from now as well, go that route, sure. But if you want something brand defining, then you need to invest more significantly, both in time, resources, and you got to be really careful. I'll just say this, Michael. A lot of people are being pulled into the AI loop. AI, super helpful tool, super helpful routine saver. But if you're going to try to build your content on AI, you're building it on a sandy foundation that's eroding as soon as you build it, because you can't actually own that content with AI, right? It's somebody else's content is being pulled in, it's being manufactured, it's shared. It's very hard to protect it when you do it that way. And so it in the short term, it's going to feel good. In the long term, you're going to really regret it that you didn't do that. But so the big answer to your question though is, if you're pursuing traditional publishing, which we can help people figure out what path to pursue and so forth, traditional publishing, the wheels turn slowly. So, if you're going to write a manuscript, you have to then pitch it to traditional publishers, and then their sales cycle takes a while. You're probably looking at least 2 years,
Oh, wow.
maybe more, to get that up and out into the world. We work in that space all the time. We work with traditional publishers. It just takes a while to do that. What we do now on the other side of that, you could go pure self-published, and if you want to dive in and become an expert and figure all that stuff out, it kind of depends on you, how quickly you want to go to create something and how quickly you can get that value. Like you said, a lot of people start into that road and then they realize, oh, wait, I need this. Oh, wait, I need that. Oh, wait, I need that.
Yep.
Taking 12 steps backwards before they can take 13 steps forward, right?
Yep.
What we do in the hybrid space, typical time frame, we like to say 9 to 10 months from start to publication, right? Because we have a system that we work people through and so forth. Sometimes that takes a little more depending on the author. Sometimes it takes less as we go through that. But if you figure, 9 months to bring a baby into the world, you can figure 9, 10 months to bring a book into the world.
Okay.
And depending on schedule, if it falls right at Christmas time and it's not the best time, well, it might take a little longer, et cetera. But something around that is pretty much what we see it taking.
That's interesting. And I appreciate you sharing because that just gives me more appreciation for all the books that are written. Just that it is a process and it does take
Absolutely.
time. It's a commitment.
It is a commitment. And a good book, you got to remember too, a good book is just bringing together of learning, of experiences, the accumulation of years often coming together and into that. So it isn't even just the commitment to do the book. It's all the stuff behind it that's gone into that. What we really try to do with the people we work with is make it not as much a commitment for them. Like, we try to carry most of that load and strategically set them up. Hey, you need to do this here. You need to do this here. You need to do this here, but not feel like they have to carry the burden of that. Right? We try to make it an actually enjoyable experience that they go through, and out of that comes this book, and they're still excited about it, right? And they're ready to share it with the world.
Yeah, I don't know that I had that experience when I did.
Right. Well,
But by the time I was done
next
with it, I
time.
never wanted to look at it again.
Yeah.
So, well,
It
I
doesn't
know
have to be. It doesn't have to be painful, Michael.
well, you've been a wealth of information here, and I'm sure some listeners are probably wanting to know, where can they follow you? Where's the best place to engage with you?
Yeah. Well, my first thing would say, go to yourstoryadvantage.com, get a copy of the book, and claim a bunch of bonuses. We got all kinds of bonuses at that site. Again, just because we're trying to equip people to really do some good in the world. If you want to connect with us directly and have a conversation, we have a special link for you, mystorybuilders.com/story. And you can just schedule a call with us. Let's talk. Let's hear some of your story. Let's see if we can be of help. If we can, we'll help you. If not, we'll get out of your way and you keep doing what you're doing. But you can connect with us at that. And then, of course, through the book, there's all kinds of free resources that we want to offer, like that story strategy one-pager. Let me just share that link again, because if someone's thinking they want that, go to yourstoryadvantage.com/free resources. So yourstoryadvantage.com/free resources. And again, that's also in the book. They can get it that way as well.
Very cool. And then you're on LinkedIn?
I am on LinkedIn. And our StoryBuilders is on Facebook, Instagram, all that kind of fun stuff. If anybody wants to DM us in any of that stuff, we're happy to connect with them there too.
Fantastic. Well, I always wrap up with one final question. It's an easy one. If you want to take a minute to think about it, though, It's if you were in a room with small business owners, different industries, different seasons of business, what's one thing that's applicable that you found? It could be an insight, it could be a tip, a book, a quote that would be applicable to all of them to help them move the needle in their business.
I'll say just what's on my kind of heart and mind lately is guard against distractions. What was the story that started you in the first place? What was it that moved you to go in this direction, to start this business or to be involved in this business or whatever the case may be? What was that why that hopefully came out of a very authentic who you are? Because my experience is in business, it's so easy to get distracted from that and lose connection with the reason you started in the first place, what motivated you to do that, and get just caught up in the busyness. So I would say, take intentional time to revisit that kind of origin story, if you will. What was it that was moving me to do this? What was it that motivated me to do this? Do I have the same joy and passion that I have now as when I was starting to do this? If so, great. Let me continue to tap into that. If not, why not? Have I drifted from that focus? Have I drifted from that passion? Have I, gotten distracted by that? And if I have, how do I get back to that? Let me just get back to that and reconnect with that and let that fuel me forward. Because at the end of the day, this entrepreneurial space, you can make all the money in the world, but if you don't enjoy what you're doing, then I think you've left the real reason for it behind it. And at the end of the day, you're not actually making the world a better place in a way that you could if that passion were aligned.
Absolutely. Well, I know I needed to hear that today, so that's great advice.
Well, I needed to hear it. That's why I shared it.
It works out for everybody. Well,
Absolutely.
Bill, appreciate you. You've shared so many golden nuggets today in the power of storytelling, and I wish you continued success.
Well, thank you, Michael. Appreciate the opportunity to share.
My pleasure. Thank you for listening to Small Business Pivots. This podcast is created and produced by my company, Boss. Our business is growing yours. Boss offers flexible business loans with business coaching support. Apply in minutes and get approved and funded in as little as 24 to 48 hours at businessownershipsimplified.com. If you're enjoying this podcast, don't forget to hit the subscribe button and share it as well. If you need help growing your business, email me at michael@michaeldmorrison.com. We'll see you next time on Small Business Pivots.